Hmm. Hello, dear guests. Hi, Ivan.
Hi, Tatiana.
Nice to see you as usual.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Yeah, so today we are continuing the series of quantum talks. Let me remind you first what is this. We decided to organize a series of events where quantum technical experts, leading experts like Ivan, our DevOps lead, answer the questions that business managers like me face during communication with our clients. And based on the feedback from our previous event that was connected to the correlation between business needs and solutions for the software architecture, we decided to continue this topic and dive more deeply into the cost effectiveness of the infrastructure, because this topic is quite interesting and really useful for business to understand how to optimize budget, right, One?
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. So first of all, let's start with defining the key cost elements of the infrastructure. Ivan, please tell what are the key cost elements you can name.
Yeah, of course, it depends on your particular application, but I think we can talk about three key elements. Of course, it's computing element, so it's different types of computing resources, EC2 instances, some Fargate instances that are underneath EC2 instances. It's like the most element that influence the cost of your application in general. The next element, of course, will be storage, because your application will use storage. Again, it depends on how much you will use. If it's media resources, then you will have more storage. If it's like not media resources, you will have less storage, but still storage influence cost a lot. And the third element is network, everything that corresponds input, output, so how much data you transfer between your users and your application, or inside your application also. So sometimes it could influence the cost. So I think it's like three base elements of the cost.
Mhm. Thank you so much for your response. In your practice, while communicating with business managers, um, how you often proceed and handle when they have a request for cost optimization? What would you recommend, like, first of all?
Yeah, first of all, again, it's planning. So
Okay.
to have good cost optimization, you need to have a plan. You need to understand how you will use your application now, how you will use your application in the future, and how long you will be using some particular parts of the service. Because if you can plan, for example, for 1 year, even for a half of the year, you can reduce cost significantly up. For example, if you can plan some types of the load for 3 years, you can cut your cost for up to 70%. So this it's a key element, and the second element, of course, is a control. You need to understand what is going on inside your infrastructure, inside your account, cloud account, monitor it, and understand like maybe each month, is it okay or not okay, current load and current prices.
Mhm. Yeah, of course. I think that planning, of course, is one of the most important aspects in every business. But as we all know, in the real world, sometimes it's absolutely impossible to plan everything,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Yeah. So, what would you recommend in such situation for a business, especially for a startup company that just launched and they could hardly plan in advance everything, especially for a long-term perspective, like 1 year plus. Would you recommend for them to optimize their infrastructure costs?
In this case, I will recommend to plan application, as we mentioned on previous meeting, starting for the cloud. So if you can plan your application with the microservices, if you can plan your application, design your application accordingly, it means that you can utilize possibility resources of the cloud more effective and of course cost effective, because you can scale down your application to the limits of your resources that is necessary right now, and when you will have some new amount of users, new amount of requests, you can scale up. So this will help you also to optimize your costs.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. By the way, I was so excited about our today's event that I forgot to mention from the very beginning that after my questions, after our dialogue with Ivan, we will also check comments from you and we will also respond them. So if you have any questions related to the topic, feel free to place them in comments on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, talking about planning, could you also elaborate, if possible, to monitor smartly the cost? Maybe there are some specific tools that business owners can use, and what would you recommend to do to at least understand what's going on?
Yes, sure. It's very important to monitor what is going on, and all cloud providers like Azure, Google Cloud, AWS suggest some tools, built-in tools that even business owners, even like financial guys could understand, could use to monitor what is going on. Such tools, again, all providers give access. Of course, there exist some more complicated tools that could use some DevOps to set up, to configure, but for you as a business owner, you can just easily visit appropriate page for your cloud provider and see bills, compare bills from current months, from the previous months, and you will have like understanding what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned that even people without technical background can use these tools, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so in practice, I faced such cases when the client, for instance, turns to a service company and okay, the service company delivers a solution, and then the client is wondering, is it necessary to continue in supporting the application? I would, I think it would be really interesting to understand in which cases it's important to have a specialist, a DevOps engineer who can better control the infrastructure. Does it really make sense for business in terms of saving costs?
It depends on the, of course, scale of the business. It depends on the scale of the infrastructure. If you have like several instances, some short amount of resources inside the cloud, in this case, of course, you don't need a DevOps or dedicated person who will on monthly basis control what is going on. When your scale is growing, when you have, I don't know, 50 instances, 100 instances, tens of different resources from the cloud provider. Of course, in this case, you need a specially dedicated person who will control, who will try to help you to understand what is going on. And the main reason why you should have such person is the speed of reaction, because if something will go wrong, you will spend a lot of time finding a person who can help you and explain what is going on.
Oh, right.
And when you have such a person inside your company, or you have some contract or support contract with service company, in this case, of course, the time of reaction will be quite fast. It's like minutes, rarely hours.
Yeah, I understand. So, comparing, for instance, with some loss that you might possibly have in case of such fault, when your business may lose money every second when the system is down, in such a case, of course.
Yeah, correct. So you each time you can compare what's like cheaper for you.
Yeah,
to
right.
have some 1, 2, 3 hours delay of the services, or to have a dedicated person who will help to support the services.
Yeah, right. Also, very often startup owners, they ask how is it better for them to start in terms of cost efficiency when they ask for their piece of advice to understand how to plan their infrastructure, whether it should be on-prem or cloud only. So what would you recommend for just an early stage company to start with?
Uh, Again, it depends on the particular application, but in general, of course, for startups, clouds are a bit better, I think, if we are talking in general, because clouds gives you like flexibility. You can grow your capacity immediately, almost immediately. What you won't never achieve with on-prem solutions. You will need time to purchase servers, to set up the servers, and to configure them. So in this case, for startups, I will recommend to use clouds. But for some rare situations when your startup could understand and will know that it will use some like CPU intensive or even GPU intensive application and load, of course, in this case, you can try to plan your own on-prem solution, starting with one or two servers maybe. And then having some maybe other resources on cloud, like mixed solution, such mixed solution.
Yeah, so to sum up, the general advice would be if you understand in the long-term perspective that you will need some resources definitely, then in such a case, you can resort to on-prem.
Yeah, you can think about on-prem.
Yeah, and from your experience, from your practice, could you tell like a really good experience of utilizing on-prem solutions comparing to cloud?
Yeah, we had some project and was making like real-time streaming with the servers. So in this case, we calculated that if client will need to have 50 servers, it will be cheaper for them, for the client to have such servers on-prem. So we created infrastructure and architecture of this solution to split some types of load and resources to on-prem solutions. So we created on-prem data center with such 50 servers, and then created some amount of resources inside AWS cloud. So we split it types of load and types of the load between on-prem solution where it was CPU and GPU intensive, very intensive. So we had 50 servers, and some types of infrastructure were placed inside the AWS. They were connected with each other, and it helped client to very effective spend money that it had.
So yeah, I heard that this case is related to live streaming. So I believe that in such a case, it's really a good solution. And for which business cases, like business domains or types of solutions, you also would recommend to resort to hybrid solutions or on-prem, only on-prem?
Sometimes it's like necessary according to some laws, according to some strict requirements from some businesses like banks, financial services. Sometimes they are strictly needed in on-prem solutions. So they need to have servers inside their own data centers so they could control. So for these types of businesses, of course, it's necessary to have on-prem solutions. For some like normal startups, clouds again should be better.
My next question is quite tricky. Did you ever have had experience when client turned to you and saw unexpectedly high bills? So the request was to handle this somehow very fast and understand how to reduce cost.
Yes, sure. It's like quite standard question. It's quite often happens. Especially it happens when client has some automatic scale up, scale down setups. Sometimes such setups could be broken. For example, quite often situation when it happens that system is scaled up, but for some reason it forget or breaks and never scale down. So in this case, of course, bills could increase much bigger than was expected from the comparing previous months. Another option, not option, but case also could be when client without maybe DevOps or like not happened that some services was misconfigured. And with the clouds, it could happen that one checkbox could increase price of the service twice or three times. So it looks like client did everything as usual, as was he did it before, but missed one checkbox. And in this case, price could be twice bigger than usual.
So what would you recommend not to have such situations? Is it absolutely possible to somehow protect the business from unexpected situations?
The easier and most reliable way, of course, to have some monitoring and some alerts, because again, cloud providers allows to have billing alerts. So it's quite easy to set up some rules that will send you email that you have bill for $500 this month, or for some each period. So you can set up an alarm that when a bill will reach $500, you will see email. And depending on when you will see this email, for example, if last month you had a bill for $1,000, then you can set up such alarm for $500. And if you will see this email in the middle of the month, that means that everything is seems to be okay. But if you will receive this email on like first week, then you will understand that something is going wrong, and you can react. But still, it's like after situation, so you will still have this bill. Ideally, is to control this by DevOps or by some like support maybe team who will control what is going on, and a person who will understand is it going okay or not okay. So.
Yeah, I understand. And we also discussed in a nutshell the importance of planning. So could you tell if it's possible for a business to make some smart predictive solution that will help actually to understand the possible loads and costs of the infrastructure accordingly?
Yeah, some cloud providers suggest some basic tools for predicting your load, your price, your bill. But to make it more efficient, of course, you can create your own tools that will predict and could plan your bills. You can involve machine learning tools. Of course, for this you will need some data. So it's not So it's not recommended for the startup that have like 2, 3, 5 months as history of their usage. But for enterprises that have years of history of usage of the clouds or not clouds, or even on-prem, you can use some data science models that allow you to predict quite sharply what you will have next month or in 1, 2, 3 months.
Yeah, so I believe it's a good advice in terms of long-term planning to save the data and to store this data, because in the future it will be possible to build such machine learning tool for smart prediction, and that the solution can potentially save your business costs, right?
Yeah, correct. So it's better to save all this data, because you can reuse it and find another way how you can use it to make your business grow bigger and more cost effective.
Yeah, great. So for now, that's all the questions from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and now I'm checking whether we have any questions, comments from our audience. Okay, sorry. Great. Yeah, so actually we have two questions that I see.
Great.
And the first one is from a person with the title Video Intelligence Architect. So the question is, if the company understands that it has already exceeded the budget limits of the infrastructure and needs to cut costs urgently, what could be done?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, of course, you need to understand for such situation, you need to have some like plan A, plan B, and so on. You need to understand what resources you can cut. You need to understand what resources should exist. For example, sometimes your infrastructure could be like twice bigger as it is normal for current capacity of the users or current amount of usage. So in this case, you need to have plan A, that you can reduce your infrastructure twice, for example, or change types of instances twice smaller. Or again, it will be ideally if you have such microservices that can easily scale down. In this case, you can scale it down. So that's the only solution. Again, it's like you will always have need to have understanding what you can done to. Can you stop your some of the services at all? For example, tell a client that guys, we will move our some services to another place. Please wait for day, 2 days, 3 days. If you have such possibility. If you don't have such possibility, you need just to reduce your usage of your resources as much as possible.
Yeah, so in means of cutting some services, you mean that if not crucial for business, right?
Yes, of course. You need to understand what. So it's ideally to have this plan before you will do it.
You mean that maybe it makes sense like to plan in advance in case of something.
Yes.
Like to have some backlog, I would say.
Yes. You will have to, you need to have a plan A.
Yeah.
Your costs are, for example, a bit bigger than you was expecting. So you can cut a little. You can cut some services. You can reduce usage of some resources. For example, standard situation when you have development environment, stage environment, production environment inside your account. So in this case, you can understand, okay, guys, our bills are a bit bigger. We can cut, for example, stage environment and move for this month or till the end of this month, testing or some processes to dev environment. Or you can tell, for example, as a plan A that we have stage environment with the capacity of the production environment to be one-to-one matching, but okay, till the end of this month, we will cut the size of the stage environment, for example, twice. So this is like plan A. Plan B, for example, could be that we are cutting everything except production environment. If it's possible and is okay for your business, then you can do this thing.
Yeah, so it's good when you have something to cut.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for the question. And the second one is from the person with the title Senior Data Scientist. Interesting. Could you tell about your experience of building infrastructure for a product with machine learning, deep learning model in the core?
Yeah. I think that it's like a very wide question. I think right now maybe I can answer it just fast. But if this question is interesting, we can make another meeting and another session with our data science specialist.
Sure.
Who can answer it better and much wider. But right now I can tell that yes, we're using cloud. We had experience with using clouds in different ways. From, for example, like more standard, it's using Kubeflow. So using Kubernetes with additions with a Kubeflow to implement different tests, different data science models, including production. We had experience with building data models and different pipelines with native EC2 resources, so like just computing resources, and also some built-in tools for the AWS cloud, for example. So yeah, we had such experience, and if expand this question maybe a bit wider, clouds are right now very suitable to working with machine learning. They have some dedicated tools. They have dedicated pipelines. They have some setups, recommended setups for different like standard machine learning tools. Also, you can every time you can, as usual, use some standard resources, CPU or GPU instances in the way you wish.
Yeah, and talking about machine learning solutions, so of course we can cover this topic during our next sessions in more detail. But for now, the question that came to my mind is because the thing that I face in practice is that the most crucial requirement sometimes can even not be the cost. It's important, yes, but when we are talking about some edge computing, it's the speed, right? Uh,
I will tell it's not a speed, it's more like flexible, that you can utilize a lot of resources almost immediately. Yes, so it's a way that your on-prem solution won't suggest you. Sometimes in data science, it's quite important because some models need just huge amount of resources, but for a short time. For example, you need to calculate some NLP model that utilize huge amount of data, but you're doing it, for example, once a week. So you can get from the cloud some huge amount of resources for 1, 2, 3 hours, and that's all. In case of on-prem, you will need to have these servers always.
Yeah.
So it's could be more cost effective, of course.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. As you see, they really made our conversation even more live. So you're welcome always to talk with us. And yeah, so we are looking forward to your feedback. And I believe that during our next sessions, we can dive deeply into the machine learning topic. So thank you so much for being with us. And very, very nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.